Greetings, attendees of the International Green Economics Seminar. My name is Rachel O'Reilly. I'm the head of business development for U.S. and the Pacific Rim for Wildlife Works. I'm talking to you today from San Francisco, California. And while I would love to be speaking with you in person and have the chance to meet you all, it would not quite be in alignment with what I do for a living, which is focusing on creating a lower carbon world. So I am going to present to you from halfway around the world. I'm grateful for the technology that we have to be able to do that. And I'm very grateful that IIM and MEA has asked me to speak to you all today about a practical example of green economics. I'm going to do that by sharing with you some information about the company I work for, Wildlife Works, and our REDD+ projects, what they mean, what they create in the world, and how we do them. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the state of forests in India and what opportunities there are there. To begin with, I'd like to share a little background with you about Wildlife Works and what this acronym REDD+ means. REDD stands for Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Degradation. It was a model that was created by the UN when they looked at all annual greenhouse gas emissions and saw that nearly 20% it can be attributed to deforestation. That figure is staggering when you think about the fact that all global transportation combined, all planes, all trains, all cars, is less than that. So deforestation is one of the biggest issues that we face in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And the UN wanted to find a way to make forests more valuable standing than cut down. They did that by creating the REDD model. REDD puts a value on forests. It creates a model that allows forests to stay standing. This is obvious. Forests sequester carbon. So they provide an important ecosystem service to the entire world by mitigating climate change. And this REDD model is meant to have a framework in which organizations, communities, countries can create projects that leave forests standing. A couple of things that REDD projects do, you can read here about it, but they obviously sequester carbon from the atmosphere by protecting these highly threatened forests. They save endangered wildlife, and they uplift impoverished and rural communities in the areas where our projects are based. Now, one important thing to note about REDD is that a REDD model can only be implemented where there is a threatened forest. So our company focuses on the most threatened forests in the world, where we can look and see a deforestation rate over time, and we can predict how long will be left for that forest until it's completely destroyed. The reason for the destruction of the world's forests are numerous, as you all know, but in our areas where we work, it can be community-based destruction out of the need to survive, and it can also be from resource companies coming in and taking advantage of the land, whether that be for logging, mining, etc. One quick thing to note before we get started in talking about these projects is I'd like to point out that these projects are incredibly credible and transparent. There are two different standard bodies that we work with to certify all of our REDD+ projects. One is the VCS, which is the Verified Carbon Standard. The second is CCB, which is Climate, Community, and Biodiversity Standard. The way you can think about these two is that the VCS is the standard that measures the carbon value of the forests, that makes sure that all of your calculations are correct around what you're saying in terms of the threat to the forest, the carbon value of the forest, and the state of the forest. The CCB is more focused on the benefits that are being brought to the community and the biodiversity because of the projects being in place. And I would like to note that in addition to these two standard bodies certifying each of the projects that we create, they also audit them on an annual basis using third-party auditors. So each year our projects are audited to ensure that we are doing on the ground what we state we are going to do in our project documents. This is extremely important because it ensures the ongoing success of the project, and it also allows us to have data year after year about how these projects are doing. In all of our projects, we have teams that live on the ground 24/7, and we create hundreds of jobs, which I'll go into, but many of those jobs are around monitoring forest and biodiversity, so that we can better understand what's happening in the forest and compare data, as I mentioned, year-on-year basis. I would like to start close to your home. I wish I was there right now. That looks beautiful. I wanted to talk about the state of forests in Northeast India. I spent some time reading the Forest Survey of India and picked a few things out to share with you today, just to give some context for why this could be applicable to where you all are. So here we have, according to the Forest Survey of India, the northeastern states of India account for 1/4 of the country's forest cover. The 2013 FSI report showed a net decline of 627 square kilometers in forest cover as compared to the previous year. So in 1 year, there was that much loss in that one part of India. In addition, the report found that mangrove cover has decreased by 34 square kilometers compared to the previous year. So this is very devastating. As many of you know, mangrove is incredibly important, not only for ecosystems, but for carbon sequestration. And as we all know, the loss of forest cover also means the loss of habitat. For some of India's most beloved threatened species, such as elephants, tigers, the Huluk gibbon, and clouded leopard, just to name a few. This is in addition, obviously, to the loss of heritage with rural communities and tribes that live in these areas that are often forced out because of deforestation. Now I would like to present to you a couple of real examples of how REDD+ looks and works. This is one of the world's largest REDD+ projects. It's our project in an area known as Mai Ndombe in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in Africa. In the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a map with a red square. That's where our project is. We're on the west side of the DRC. We are not close to any of the areas that have had history of civil unrest. Where we are in the Congo Basin rainforest. We have a project there that's protecting over 740,000 acres of the world's second largest intact rainforest. And a bonus that we got as part of this project is that there is the wetland of greatest international importance according to the Ramsar Convention included in our project. This project brings benefits of direct carbon financing to this rural community of about 50,000 people, and because we stepped in to protect this highly threatened area, it resulted in the cancellation of an industrial logging concession. So you can imagine this is just one photo of many beautiful images of this project. This entire area would have been decimated due to the logging concession if we hadn't stepped in. The second project that we have is in Kenya, and it's the world's first verified REDD+ project. It's in the Kasagao corridor of Kenya. Again, on the map, you'll see the red square outlining where our project is. As you can see, it's in between two of Kenya's largest national parks. It protects over 500,000 acres of threatened forests and brings the benefits of carbon financing to a rural community of 100,000 people there. And one thing that I'll note is that all of these projects, the way in which we protect the forest, the way in which we benefit the community, is by putting a carbon value on the forest. That's what the REDD model was meant for. And that the value of the carbon in the forest is then equated to carbon offsets. And we go and we sell those to large companies and corporates and organizations that want to be accountable for their unavoidable emissions. So all of this is a carbon model. Both of these projects are successful examples of this. And I'm going to go into some of the details about what happens when you protect a forest in this way and what the benefits are from selling these offsets to different types of companies and how it gets back to the ground to create real transformation. In terms of wildlife in the forests, obviously we have a plethora of interesting species both in the DRC and in Kenya. I can let you read on the screen here about some of the species, but many of these are threatened or endangered species, and it's extremely important to keep these habitats intact so that all of these animals and all of the biodiversity that creates this ecosystem can live successfully. I'll pause for a moment so you can read a bit about the biodiversity in these projects. Education is a big focus at both of our projects. When we sell a carbon offset, every single time that happens, not only do the landowners benefit in Kenya, it's a 4,500 individual landowners that benefit, but we also have a community trust set up, and the community themselves gets to decide how they will spend the money, and then we manage the process of making sure that that money goes where it's supposed to. So for example, in Kenya, the community decided to use 40% of its allocation from carbon proceeds to fund school bursaries. That program has led to over 2,500 children being awarded those bursaries. In the DRC, which is our newest project, there were no schools in the project area. Now we have 2 schools that have been constructed, with 18 additional schools that will be built over the next several years. In addition to that, so that students didn't have to wait for the schools to be built, we've distributed 8,000 learning kits. And many of the children who are receiving these learning kits and going to school have never had access to education in this way. And this is the first time in their lives that they're able to participate. Health is also an important point for our RED projects. I'll let you read a little bit about that here, but overall, our main goal is to make sure that the community's needs are met health-wise. This has to do from everything from making sure that testing is available for diseases and illnesses that are unfortunately common in this area, to making sure that simple medications, simple life-saving medications are available for such terrible illnesses as malaria and other diseases that can easily take a life unnecessarily. It's all really about the community for us with all of these projects. So we take a holistic approach to conservation that includes the community at every step. This model of including the community begins before we even start the project. We go through months and sometimes years of communications with the community, local and national governments to make sure everybody is on board with how they will benefit from the project and what it means for the development of their community. So if the following are a few examples of the types of sustainable development that leads to this green economic model that we have through RED Plus projects. In all of these projects, we have to figure out how to address the root causes of deforestation. So one thing that we work on closely with the community is food and water security, and that comes in the form of agricultural intensification initiatives as well as various water projects. A specific example of how our water projects have affected the community comes from our project in Kenya. Before we implemented different water catchment projects throughout the project area, most families had to travel for hours and paid 60 cents for 20 liters of water. However, with the newly developed water catchment projects, the community has closer access to water, and they pay 25 cents per month for unlimited water for the entire family. These types of benefits result in enhanced quality of life, more expendable income, and increased health and well-being. This especially affects women and children. On that note, we believe that supporting women's empowerment and development is important in any rural community, and that's why we're committed to empowering women in a variety of ways. A few examples are job creation, small enterprise development, and education. We also help with food security for families by distributing seedlings and fruit trees. We also have a healthcare program that includes a nurse that's available to all of our female staff on a weekly basis. This allows women to have a more private way to discuss their female health-related concerns. And that's Mama Mercy there, who's our women's group leader, one of our women's group leaders in Kenya. Job creation is our core conservation strategy, as we like to say. We believe that by offering people sustainable jobs, they no longer need to destroy their environment just to survive. Hundreds of jobs have been created, ranging from eco-factories workers to seamstresses to rangers to forest monitors to teachers and more. This is all very important because if the community has a sustainable livelihood strategy, so to speak, then they're not forced to participate in either selling their land to resource companies, destroying it to survive, or the numerous other ways in which forest ends up being destroyed out of community necessities. All of these jobs, we have about over 400 created in Kenya. We have over 100 created in the DRC. Again, the DRC is a newer project, so we're still building up the job creation activities there. And all of these jobs are full-time, sustainable jobs for members of the community. I also would like to give you a perspective about who are the customers that are purchasing these offsets. Many of the names you see up here are either 100% carbon neutral, meaning that they've taken consideration of all of their unavoidable emissions and are offsetting all of those unavoidable emissions with our projects, or we're part of a portfolio or certain initiative that they have to offset an aspect of their business. We have more customers than this, but this is just an example of a few. These are companies that believe that green economic development is a key to including in their business strategies, and it's encouraging to see the success we've had with some of the world's largest brand names. This takes us back to looking at the possibility of RED in India. Right now, there are a few international organizations, including Wildlife Works and local NGOs, that are in the early stages of determining if a RED Plus project in Meghalaya is feasible. This is very exciting. And in addition to that, USAID is sponsoring a 5-year, $15 million project called Forest Plus, Sustainable Forests and Climate Adaptation. It is working with 4 Indian states, as listed here, and they are looking at how to prepare each of those states for RED Plus implementation. So, in summary, can green economics be successful and play a leading role in climate change mitigation? Yes. If you look at the RED Plus model, if you look at how these projects are benefiting not only forests and wildlife, but also communities for the long term, you can clearly see that everyone is winning here. The companies that are involved are being responsible for their emissions. The communities, the local and national governments are being paid appropriately for protecting their forests instead of destroying them. And sustainable development is being put into place so that all of these projects have a way to sustain themselves without the destruction of their forests far into the future. All of our project terms are 30 years, so we will be around for a long time, but the goal is that we have so much sustainable development that gets put into place that is so relevant to the community and authentic to the area that we will not have to be, having this model 30 years from now. Hopefully we'll be in a different place with it. With that, I would like to thank everyone that's been involved in making the Green Economics Seminar possible, including IIM Shillong and MEA and all the people that worked so hard on pulling this together. If you're interested in learning more about the state of the forests in India, I encourage you to research the Forest Survey of India. It's got some really great information that's very clearly laid out and easy to go through. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I look forward to hopefully meeting you all in person someday, and in the meantime, wish you the best and a very successful, inspiring seminar. It's events like this when we come together and share what's working and what's not working in all different parts of the world that we can truly begin to solve problems at home and be inspired by what's happening, even in Africa. So thank you for having me. Have a wonderful conference.